Hey Kirk, how are you? Good morning.
Good morning to you. How you doing?
We're doing all right. So we've got with us Kirk Bohls here. By habit, used to introducing you as from the Austin American Statesman, but you're now in a new place this year at the Houston Chronicle. So congratulations on a move there. Certainly Texas has been interesting to cover this year, more than any in recent years. How did you feel about this weekend's game against Oklahoma? 34-3 was certainly an impressive result for the Horns. What does it say about Texas so far, and what does it speak to when they perform that way in a rivalry game?
Well, Sam, it probably tells that Texas really deserves that number one ranking. Quite frankly, I really wasn't surprised. I figured they were going to win big. I figured they'd cover the spread. And when a team, brings its maybe C plus offensive game and still wins by 31 against your biggest blood rival, I'd say that's pretty impressive.
Is there anything particular you've learned about Texas from this undefeated start, this number one ranking? Is there something that they've been doing better or differently than you would have expected going into the year to kind of attain this position they have?
Well, I think everybody had them pegged probably a top five, maybe even a top three team. But, probably the most impressive thing has been their pass defense because, that was their Achilles heel last year. They ranked about 116th in pass defense. Their secondary really got riddled. They gave up a lot of huge chunk plays. For the defensive backs end up transferring out. Texas got a couple of new transfers. One was Andrew Makuba, a 3-year starter at safety for Clemson. Another one was Lovie from San Jose State. And while he's not a starter at cornerback, he gives them a lot of depth there, which they need because they just lost safety Derek Williams. He was lost for the season, had surgery, and hurts their depth a little bit. But the pass defense, they're ranked like second in the nation, and they're giving up 126 yards a game. And the last we saw them last year, they were getting strafed by Michael Penix in the Sugar Bowl, and he passed for 430 yards. They never touched him, never pressured him, and so that's probably their biggest upside from last year, I'd say.
Now, obviously, a lot of attention being paid to this weekend's matchup against Georgia. It'll be the game day game. What are you expecting out of this? The big home game. Do you have Texas winning? What are your thoughts on Georgia coming in, and how do you expect it to play out?
I think Texas is the better team, or at least has played better. I think these first six games of the season, they're a slight 3 point, 3.5 point favorite. They got Quinn Ewers back last week from the oblique strain, and while he didn't play his best game, I think he'll play better in his second game. He hadn't played in a month. He was off for 2 games when Arch Manning played very well in his place, and then they had a bye week. So, he hadn't been on the field since September 14th. And then Oklahoma's got a very good defense. Their offense is kind of in shambles right now, but they do have a good defense. So, one thing that's going to be very interesting is they haven't played great quarterbacks this year. And Carson Beck kind of brings a new challenge to them. I mean, he'd probably be a first round draft pick. Last year, he's a senior. And yeah, he doesn't quite have all the weapons, that he had last year. He doesn't have Brock Bowers anymore. And he doesn't have Lad McConkey. And Trevor Etienne's been banged up a little bit. I was surprised to see their running game was ranked like 92nd in the nation. I was really put off by that. So it hadn't been the Georgia I think we all expected, but I think we'll see a better Georgia this year. They'll be pretty fired up coming in here for the first time.
I think we certainly all know what they're capable of.
Yeah, we
I
do.
think staying in the SEC, getting away from Texas for a minute. I was going through you and a couple colleagues have your weekly SEC power rankings. I noticed you had LSU ranked third in your power rankings this week, and it had a note in there about Garrett Nussmeier and his play of late. What has you feeling so good about LSU as arguably the third best team in the SEC right now?
But they're finishing. They're only three unbeaten teams, and Texas A&M and LSU are those three. And so I give them credit for winning. They're finishing, which they hadn't done, recently under Brian Kelly. And Garrett Nussmeier's a big reason for that. I listened to the second half of the Ole Miss game on the way back from Dallas in my car, and he got it done. The only time they led was the last play of the game. And so, they are playing better. I watched a lot of them, a lot of their game against South Carolina, which has also improved this year. And that wasn't the prettiest game. And a lot of people thought maybe the Gamecocks should have won that and could have without some, crucial penalties there against South Carolina. So I know we're going to know a lot more about LSU. And I know they're really going to miss Harold Perkins down the stretch because he's a dynamic player. But I mean, I look at the schedule. They go to Arkansas. That's going to be a tough one because we saw Arkansas is much improved after beating Tennessee. Then they go to A&M, which I covered that A&M Missouri game, and they're the real deal. And Connor Wigman looks like he's healthy now. And then they host Alabama. So we're going to find out a whole lot about, how good and how deep maybe LSU is these next 3 weeks.
So what I'm hearing from all that is that you saw last week's crazy good play of the week with that crazy punt from Texas A&M in person. Is what I saw.
Yeah, I did. That was pretty crazy. And I love how you are doing that. I think the craziest play I've seen all year, though, may have been Ryan Williams' catch to beat Georgia. The way it was underthrown and he came back and he caught it. He runs 2 yards, he stops, he does a 180-yard spin and go up the field. But, that tight end catch was great. And I tell you what was not the best crazy play. That was Texas had a trick play against Oklahoma, and Texas was the one that got tricked. Matthew Golden's one of their new receivers, transferred from Houston. He threw the double pass, and it was so bad that in the Monday team meeting, Steve Sarkisian, he always has a session in there, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and to show and to bring some levity to the situation, he had a clip of 50 Cent throwing out the first pitch. I don't know if you remember that or not. I don't even remember which game it was. He threw it right in the on deck circle. I think he almost hit a cameraman. So they got a big chuckle out of that.
That's awesome. It's great to see Coach kind of bringing that levity to the room as well. It's certainly easier to do when you're number one in the country,
Oh
I
yeah,
imagine. But
yeah, yeah, exactly.
I'll close with this. The rest of the schedule for Texas. You've got on the other side of Georgia. Certainly, nobody's looking ahead to Vandy, but they've been playing very well of late. And then you've got Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky, and then A&M to close the season. What are your thoughts on the home stretch in general, and how do you feel? Do you think Texas ends up as one of the SEC's playoff teams at the end of all this?
I'm going to be surprised if they don't end up in the playoffs. I kind of thought my preseason prediction, I thought they might go like 10-2. Just being in the SEC and having to play Oklahoma and Georgia back to back is going to be a big challenge. So one thing I would say is that, everybody kind of made fun of their schedule all summer and like, how did Texas get the friendly schedule? Well, and then Arkansas beats Tennessee. Vanderbilt shocks Alabama. A&M just trounces Missouri. Wasn't even a game. And they have all three of those on the road, this second half of the season. So it's not the cakewalk that kind of people thought. I think Vanderbilt's probably the story of the year, quite frankly. I mean, for them to do what they're doing and then to beat Kentucky, a real physical team. I mean, Texas will have a little challenge because they'll probably have a mental letdown. As serious as they've been taking everybody, after you played Oklahoma and Georgia, you're probably, just human nature being what it is. I think they'll probably have a little bit of a come down. So I don't know if they can run the table, but it is a complete team, and I've been as impressed with them as I've been with a Texas team in probably 20 years. They don't have obvious weakness. So, it's gonna be fun, and it's interesting that they're finally nationally relevant again.
So if you were guessing, how many playoff teams do you think the SEC sends this year? You mentioned the three undefeated conference teams
Right.
at the moment, but what do you think that looks like when we get to week 13, so to speak?
Well, I think a minimum of three, maybe as many as five. I kind of think the Big 12 and the ACC will kind of beat each other up a little bit, and they probably won't have the nationally high ranking as maybe some of their teams are right now. So I could see them having a maximum of five, but I would bet at least four.
Well, Kirk, we thank you again for your time this morning. This is Kirk Bohls from the Houston Chronicle. Covers all things Texas, all things SEC, but just an expert on all things college football, really. So thank you again for joining us this morning. And with that, we'll hand it off to Matt Repchek to go through a little more analysis of the standings themselves. Thank you again, Kirk.
My pleasure. Thank you.